everybody for coming to my talk. It's been an honor and a privilege to be here with you guys today. And my presentation basically will be how difficult it is to migrate from Spring to JakartaEE. So basically who I am, I'm Buhake. I'm basically have been a full stack Java enterprise developer for, do I post this thing from ever playing too quickly? For over since 2006. So I'm also a JakartaEE ambassador. So I've been for over 15 years. I've been full stack developer in a Java ecosystem. I've dabbled along with Spring as well. So enterprise backend developer, that's been my bread and butter. And I also run a nonprofit called DevOps for Kids South Africa, and basically other activity is running and blogging and stuff. You can actually find me on social media or email. Okay, I have no idea how this thing is running way too fast because I don't know what's going on. Can I switch this thing to that? Then it's much easier. Hold on. Does anybody know how to stop this thing from forever playing quickly? Okay, so quickly about DevOps for Kids. So we basically run a nonprofit initiative to teach kids how to code. So it's basically a weekend where kids learn, especially from the advantaged background, to learn how to code. And we had one event on the 3rd of September where we learned microbit, the fundamental construct of programming using microbit. And we built a pedometer, basically a step counter. And so we're kind of looking for sponsorships and donations so that we can buy more laptops and equipment for kids to code. And yeah, so basically that's what we do. And we trying to also expand it to various places around South Africa. So we've had that, some in Cape Town, some in Joburg. So we want to go to, South Africa has 9 provinces, so we're trying to reach all 9 provinces. And yeah, the links are on devopsforkids.org.za, where you can get as much detail as possible. So back to the talks. So this is mostly addressed to Spring developers who actually find that JavaEE is a bit problematic. So I'm trying to highlight, the history why JavaEE was problematic, where Spring came in, and then how JavaEE progressed in order to catch up and to be innovative. So, and why should we consider JavaEE? And then if we have time, we can do an example and then a Q&A at the end. So JavaEE before Spring was a bit problematic because one, it was the application required a container to run. Everything had to be in EJB. There was messy configuration. Everything had XMLs. Application server took too long to start. So if you had to write a feature and whatever, you had to write. It was impossible to test. There was no testing frameworks then. So it was always a slow process. And if Java had to adapt to newer technology, it took roughly 4 years for newer releases. So developers got frustrated. Most of them went to other frameworks like Struts and Spring. So where Spring came in around 2004, so they're trying to break the idea of relying on a component and sticking to components by introducing POJOs. So POJOs did not really tie into a framework basically, and it was easy to test because you can just mock your POJO and and actually write your test cases from there. And because it is community driven, so there was faster pace of innovation. So Spring was one of the earlier frameworks to move into the cloud, and by introducing Spring Boot and Spring Cloud Native. So in order for JavaEE to catch up, a lot of the big shift happened. So we moved to easy development. So introducing from JavaEE 5 to Java-based annotations instead of using XML. And from there, with JavaEE 6, we started the introduction of RESTful services and CDI. And fun fact, Rod Johnson, the creator of Spring Framework, was also instrumental in introducing the CDI specs. And then various technology now tied into the CDI framework, including like JSF, a bit of EJBs, etc. And also RESTful microservices as well. And then JavaEE 7 is basically enhancement already of what was existing in Java 5 and Java 6. But we still had the issue where JavaEE still needed to release rapidly, but I'll talk about that. And then so JavaEE, in order to move rapidly and adapt to cloud-based, cloud-centric model, since most enterprises were moving to that. So the solution was to move more open source. So Oracle, in about 2017, decided to move JavaEE to Eclipse Foundation, and that's when now the JakartaEE was born. And in 2019, we got JakartaEE 8, which was basically JavaEE 8, and now moved into the JakartaEE and Eclipse ecosystem. And recently, as in the 13th of this month actually, we got JakartaEE 10, which supports JDK 17. And this now that JakartaEE now moved into the Eclipse Foundation, and the Eclipse the Eclipse Foundation, the Eclipse micro profile came in. So it's basically the enterprise Java for microservices architecture. So it uses what's already the strong knowledge or the strong frameworks from JakartaEE, which is like your annotations, your RESTful web services, your CDI, and the JSON, and added another industry standards for microservices and bundled it into Eclipse microprofile, like your Open Tracing, your Open API, your Swagger, basically your fault tolerance, etc., etc. And the last current release was last year, November, which is microprofile version 5. Why should you use JakartaEE? Many Spring developers say, oh, Spring is bloated, JavaEE was bloated. Now we went into lighter frameworks. Okay, now how do I wait? Hold on. Is it possible to pause? Okay, so so the applications are now lighter. So if you take a JakartaEE based application server, everything starts up most relatively quickly with all the basic components and services already ready to use. So you do not need to add features already or add your, so for example, your JPA will either have your Hibernate or your Eclipse link bundled and ready to run, so you don't need to worry about what kind of JPA provider you need. The CDI container is already there, your default Java mail, etc., etc. And So it's simpler to deploy, and your application is now smaller. So now you will hear things like a thin wall, thin jar. There's no need for enterprise archive files anymore. What else? And features that already exist in Spring have been integrated to JakartaEE. For example, if you use CDI, you know they add inject. Spring batch, there's JakartaEE batch as well that follows the same format. It's just probably your naming that will be different, but same. You can now unit test your application with Aquilian. So Aquilian is even better because it even does your integration test at the same time. So it will create your test case into a WAR file, put it into your container, test it. If it passes, it actually generates back the results. And then for microservices, you can do microshare testing. And now, with faster, rapid adoption, JakartaEE 10 supports JDK 17, and like I said, with microprofile 5, you basically now up to speed with the latest in the Java ecosystem as well. And open source, so you can also contribute if you want to join. And there's strong membership from other teams like your Oracle, your Microsoft, your Payaras, and also one thing as well, because most enterprises run already like some Java-based enterprise application server, like your WebLogic, like your Oracles, like your IBM WebSphere application server, or Payara, or Payara Micro, or Red Hat Wildfly. So you can get the enterprise support. So if you write your JavaEE or JakartaEE based applications and you have an issue with your container, or you don't understand the behavior, you can get enterprise support. Mostly you will not get support if you have a Spring-based issue deployed on your enterprise application. We had one instance where we worked at the client actually used JSF as a front-end application, but the backend was actually controlled by Spring. The only problem is the life cycle of Spring-based application. The beans was singleton scoped, and people were complaining why they're seeing other people's data, and we tried to solve that by mostly basing it into a request or session scope, depending on what data needed to happen, and also try and move it more to behave like a Spring-based application instead of following the JSF way, because JSF nowadays ties in mostly with CDI by default. So it will be managed by CDI container. Okay, so that's more or less why. And also, since it is lightweight, most people write a 3-tier application. So basically, they have like a front end, which probably is RESTful, or uses like some MVC, or in our case also JSF, and then they have a business service that they have that they annotate with at service and inject your business services, and then they have some repository and use already Spring managed repository that comes bundled. With CDI, you can basically kind of model the exact same thing. You can have your front end can be a RESTful services. You can have your business services that you can create as a business logic unit, and also have repository service is exactly identical. Other ways which some have tried and managed, some have managed, is because Spring framework does not really tie to a lot of the technology, basically. So it's not really, it's not like back in the day where your Java bean had to be, if you had to use EJB, it had to be tied with EJBs strictly, like a EJB Java bean. You can actually use your existing code base and just inject them automatically into Java, into your JavarEE or JakartaEE application. So I'm going to show you an example of what I've managed to do. Trying to replicate it into like a Spring-based application, and then if we're done, we can actually go into questions and some Q&A. So prepare the questions if you have. I will share my IDE quickly. Sure. Okay, so in this case, for example, we created a simple microservice in this case, which we brought it down into 3 components. The repository, which is basically your repository, same thing like what you would have in Spring. This is a simple repository with an identifiable entity, which is basically your entity, and with a simple abstract JPI repository and a user repository, which basically should extend the JPI repository. So, which I have actually missed. And then your REST is basically your microservice. Basically, you have your user resource, which basically has, which is basically your point to your user services, and your simple, and you have a user service over here, which is also over there. Where is my user service? So there's your service. This is where all the user services lies in, with its implementation over here. Don't worry about the code errors. It's because I'm busy. It builds. I'm building Maven separately, so it identifies as issues. So there's your user repository services, and where's my user resource? My user resource is over here. So there's a path here. It can produce JSON or XML, and here are all your open API operations, which basically describes your methods on your services. And you can see sometimes you can have a path with conditions, which basically allows you to write like regex expressions to say, I want my username that has these following criteria. If it matches, it will actually call these methods over here. And you can create new user. You have a put, you have a post method, and you have a delete method to actually delete. I know there's in Spring, I think it's request mapping. So this is not really necessary. You can actually say get put and what, and you can say response.ok, which is, it returns an HTTP OK response, and you can actually follow the HTTP standard. Like for example, created. When you create new, you can say respond.created, So basically, the 3-tier application that I have here, which actually says my user service over here injects a user repository over here, which actually, you know what, let me I need to copy this. I'm going to fix this thing quickly. So space. Repository. So this for now. With some of these API repository. And repository. No. Yeah, so this now should basically build if okay, where is this? And the nice thing about this thing is that I do not have any configuration. The only configuration is here where I said beans.xml, which basically tells the container that, you know what, please enable CDI and do bean discovery on everything that can be injected. So it basically tries to find all my interfaces and find an implementation that actually can link to the one implementation that can link to my interfaces. And then my persistence.xml is basically where I create my data sources for my JPA. And because my microservice is basically agnostic to the technology that I run in, I'm actually using Open Liberty. So I have a Liberty server.xml, which I'm actually enable the feature for Micro Profile 5 and JakartaEE 9.1. And I've only created database source over here and specify where the location of my SQL connector Java driver is located. There's basically that. There's no other configuration over here, and then the only test cases that are here is basically microshare testing, where you basically inject your resource as a REST client, and then what it will do, it will try and create a container where it will actually test your resources. And this should now build and see if I can actually have, wait, actually I can share the screen actually, because it wouldn't be nice to share something without. Share. Okay, so I've shared the screen and hopefully I can run this thing. So, and the nice the nice little thing is, when I say this thing is lightweight, my WAV file is basically 45 kilobytes small. So basically, if I wanted to, I can actually deploy it on a WebSphere application server if all the configuration are configured properly, and this would actually run. So it's literally allows you to build a very thin microservice. And right now, my profile is starting with just the configuration that's sitting on the server.xml. And hopefully this should actually pop up and run without any issues. And so, as I said, most services come with a default, like there's a default server that's already been created. It's just installing the features. So when it runs once, it might take long because it goes to the feature server at OpenWrt, it downloads whatever is required, but since one is already downloaded, it just needs to set up. Sorry. So it's launched the default server. Let's see what happens now. Okay. The application JCON Microservices could not be started as it could not be found at location. Why? Okay, now I know why. From both. Maven is your best friend. So I forgot to mention that all the dependencies are basically on Maven. So the only thing that you would really need is your JakartaEE API, your micro profile API, and JatsB if you want to do XML binding. And all of that are already provided in a container, so you just set a scope as provided. You do not need to do anything else. Container. So if we go here, both. JCON. Okay, so hopefully this should sort out this problem. Yes, finish batch and in package. Now it's building, it's generates, there we go, there's the WAV file. now that we have the raw file, we can actually say run liberty in dev mode, and hopefully from there it should pick up this microservice and start running. We have, in the meantime, if there's any questions that anybody wants to ask, feel free. It'll be like a minute or two before this thing starts. While we're here, let's see. Something is happening. Something's happening. I don't know what host thing is, but let's see. Localhost. I don't know what host or document internal means. Okay, so somehow my microservice got stopped by removed before host. Why is it stopped? I have no idea. Okay, so here this, but this works though. Okay, so here's my user resource liveness check, which is basically my profile's host check over here, which is here. And it tells me memory used, memory max, which is here. And status is up. And it says service data available. And it says the resource is ready. So, but I do not know the credentials, so I have no idea what to use. We can always try 28. Okay, so since my application seems to be up, all right, so my microservice is up. So you can actually create a new user. You can try it out, and you come into this. So you can have 1, 2, 3, 4. Resume, my surname, date of birth is 19. And execute. And my response is here. So here's my response that it got generated, and this should actually exist in my database. Now it says 2 rows, and there's a A1, 2, 3, 4 that I've created today. So yeah, so in a nutshell, we basically did the same layout that we would have in a Spring-based application, with the addition of exception handling. So let me get back to the slides if possible. Where do I show them? So basically, in a nutshell, I've tried to show exactly how to move from, how to adopt JakartaEE. If you are from the Spring environment, you'll see that most of the stuff is exactly the same. There's no huge learning curve. The only difference is you will have to learn the life cycle of the component. For example, JCON-ONLINE, how it works, and how, for example, how the exception handling happens. Probably your testing will be different because here we use microshare testing, and JSF. If you have used JSF, it will not be a problem, except that you will have to learn how CDI works on a JakartaEE, the JakartaEE way, because there's no like default singleton scoping or whatever on a beam, basically. So other than that, besides those two minor learning curves, other than that, if you used to if you haven't come from the background of using XML to configure your applications and your beans and your services and your repositories, and you're familiar with just annotations, then JakartaEE is more than suitable to do that, and it follows well-recognized standards with a lot of corporates and individuals working into the standardization. So the most important thing is standardization. So yeah, and you can run it on standalone as well. So you can run CDI on a standalone, and especially now that we have CDI Lite, that's basically will come to your advantage as well. So if you want to run it on standalone, it's fully fledged for that as well. Okay, thank you for coming and managed to get this thing working.